Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Well, things continue on. As the title of our show this week says, the fallout continues, reality sets in. We're now seeing Labour already up to some things that, well, certainly we don't approve of. We'll see what you think and when we discuss them. So let's get the troops in and get started. We have over there in Edinburgh, we've got Lloyd Quinnan.
Hi, Roddy.
How are you doing?
I'm well, very well.
Good. Lots to talk about tonight, again. Oh, yes. And we've got our favourite lawyer. There she is. Our Eva, how are you?
Hi, good, Roddy, thanks. Could I say a very quick happy birthday, please, to my friend Maggie Semple, and a big thank you to Maggie and her husband John for all their support during the campaign, and particularly to them both, happy anniversary. Thank you.
No, you can't say it. There you go. Would it have made any difference if I couldn't say no to you anyway, Eva? I just couldn't say no. And we've got the old Cavalier himself, and he's in the brig. He's in the Cope brig. How are we doing, Philip?
I'm great to be back in the brig. Had a fish supper and a cup of tea. Get a square sausage and roll square sausage the morning. Happy days.
Oh,
health food, obviously.
You kind of like it. Great stuff. Well, we're just still in the aftermath, Lloyd, of the general election. And one of the first things Starmer did was he went to the two colonies, the 6 occupied counties. But first they come up to Jockistan. I went in to see our Peter, not Peter, our Swinney, Mr. Swinney. He made sure there was no saltires there. Did you notice that? He was sitting there. The saltires had been removed. He didn't want to offend the imperial master.
I think, Roddy, I was just waiting for the press release to come out to say that John had successfully managed to negotiate a room with no flags rather than a room with Union Jacks. No, it's pathetic. I mean, these are tiny things, but they're important things. I mean, even the Empress herself made sure that her flag was in the room. I don't understand John not recognising that the precedent has been set. It's been set for 20 years. When you have a meeting in Bute House, irrelevant of which party the First Minister represents, there is a saltire in the room. That's just been the reality. So I would suggest that what happened here was Keir came in and said, we'll be having Union flags. And then there was an arrangement made for no flags instead. And maybe that should be John's new nickname, John No Flags Swinney.
There is, but also, as someone who watches a lot of body language, when he went to Northern Ireland the following day, the body language of Starmer was completely different because our Mary Lou and the lovely Michelle O'Neill were letting him know they weren't bending the knee, they weren't sending any MPs down, and they were he get a flea in his ear getting told that shouldn't be not taking nonsense.
It's when they cross the 21 miles from Port Patrick to Larne, it's a new political reality. Mm-hmm. And Starmer or any other British Prime Minister cannot deal with the people of the occupied 6 counties, and they certainly cannot deal with Sinn Féin in the same way as they treat the parties in the mainland colonies, namely Wales and Scotland. And the basis for that is very straightforward, Roddy. There is a level from Sinn Féin to the British of an element of respect, but at the same time, there's a head full of the knowledge of what has gone on in the past, and what indeed is still going on to some degree. But I think one of the other things that made it even clearer to me, because I chose to watch the news as was in the British 6 o'clock news, and then I turned over for the BBC News from Northern Ireland. Radically different from the 6 o'clock news, radically different from reporting Scotland here in Scotland, because the BBC in Northern Ireland has to live within a political reality where in excess of 50% of the people want an independent, united Ireland. It's time the BBC in Scotland woke up to the political reality here, but it will require our politicians to push them into it, that in excess of 50% of the people of our country want an independent Scotland, never mind anything else. When that political reality sinks in with the journalists at the BBC and sinks in properly with our politicians, then we'll start moving again.
I think you're good. The other thing I saw, Phil, was Mary Lou. Of course, the English journalists can't, stand it, for their mother of Parliament. Why wouldn't you want to go? Asking her, would you still be, abstaining from going? And she made it abundantly clear, we'd started this, we wouldn't have this building behind us. She said if we hadn't behaved the way we do, and we will not be changing now, and we are not going to Westminster. My heart was pounding for her. I was so proud and wishing that I was Irish.
Yeah, the contrast couldn't be more striking. And it's not just with that. The Irish and Sinn Féin are on track for a united Ireland. What we face now is their party that was leading us have been infiltrated in a way that Sinn Féin managed to avoid. They play a different game. They are much tighter. They were like we were at the beginning, except they had a history that was a little bit unique. And when you look how the IRA were infiltrated and people that they knew were infiltrated by the British state, they knew what they were up against. Our people don't. They just don't, or they didn't, but they do now, especially the ones that are now being controlled and are in leadership of the SNP. But one of the big striking issues about not having a saltire at Butte House, Gerard Burns, an artist and musician behind the band Valerie and the Week of Wonders, had he's got plenty of paintings, but wonderful Scottish life featuring the saltire inspired paintings. One of which, a huge one, sat behind Alex when he was there in Butte House. Oh, how the worm has turned when we now see Spinny Swinny, or whatever his new name's going to be, because the guy's he's letting us down, the same as the rest of these shysters that currently control a party that is no longer got our back. They've turned their backs on us. So for me, and I remember, that was a period of time when I was in Butte House a couple of times, and saw the as we headed towards the 2014 referendum. With this kind of stuff, with saltires appearing more regularly, you weren't shy about being a Scottish nationalist. We were still a wee bit edgy about the word nationalism, but now we should. I think there's something you've mentioned a few times, a few have mentioned. Stop pretending that this is a bad thing, or we should apologise for being who we are, or knowing your history when England has been our greatest enemy for most of our existence. And I'm not talking about the people of England, I'm talking about the people that run it. So no, be proud of your flag. I'm not going into talking about jingoistic nationalism here. I'm not talking about jingoistic politics and sabre rattling. I'm talking about knowing your people, knowing what matters and standing up for what's right, and being proud of your culture. And it's a very welcoming, inclusive culture. But the most important thing about it, you build a culture to represent and support the people who live and work in that culture. You don't build it to stand for the rights of hermaphrodites in Finland. This is a Scottish country, a country of Scottish people with a great mixture of people, and we're a great blend of people. There's lots of people who come here, and it comprises of everybody who lives and works here, and we're inclusive. But it's a culture that suits us and what our values are, and it's more socialist than England. It's a fairer place. It's not as corrupt. And we stand up for what's right. It's long overdue we did that. And John Swinney, you're not doing it. Jog on, John. Oh, money, Roddy.
Oh, a pound. I saw an article today. In 1999, the Tartan Army downed playing England, and it's all lion rampants. Oh, you can seize lion rampants. Then it showed you Germany. No lion rampant to be seen. It's the saltire everywhere. There has been that has been growing. Brings us on to one of the stalwarts of over the decades of the SNP, Alec Neil, who's sadly now left Holyrood, come out this week, Eva, to say he thinks that Swinney should resign. Is he right that he should resign?
He's absolutely right. And if there were more evidence needed of that, one only needs to consider the content of the press release issued on behalf of John Swinney after he met Keir Starmer, because his press release says that they discussed areas where both governments can work together, including on eradicating child poverty and growing the economy. That was it. That was the statement. That was the précis of it that was put out. Talk about living on your knees, because that's exactly what that was. The man is not fit to run the Scottish government, and he is certainly not, and fallen very far from ever becoming anything like a freedom fighter or the leader of one who purports to want to lead his country to independence. That word has barely crossed his lips. You remember prior to the election, there was talk that after the election there would be a constitutional convention set up by the SNP, by the Scottish Government. There would be all sorts of things happening. There would be a request made to Labour for yet another Section 30, etc. We all poo-pooed that. We were right so to do. The result of the election from an SNP perspective was a foregone conclusion. And John Swinney plays a large part in that because he has been at the top of the SNP for decades. The fact that he's only been the leader for a handful of weeks is completely and utterly irrelevant. He's the man who's been behind all the big decisions. Remember Mr. Redacted and everything that went along with that? He shouldn't be in the job. You compare and contrast his conduct with that of Mary Lou MacDonald and Michelle O'Neill, as the others have already done, and look at the information that came out of Sinn Féin after they met Keir Starmer. There was a powerful statement spelling out in words of one syllable with great force what they had said, how they had put it to Keir Starmer, and make no mistake, they laid it on the line to him in a way that John Swinney is clearly either unwilling or incapable of doing. The man is not a leader. And if Scotland is to recover and properly recover and head towards independence, and if 2026 and the Holyrood election is to be the independence election, then the SNP stables need cleared immediately, as Jim Sillars wrote earlier this week, and it needs to start at the top and go right through the whole load of them who in essence have sold out and will continue to sell out our country. John Swinney needs to go and go now.
Yeah, he does indeed. Swinney's a middle manager, if you ask me. Everyone in this audience and everyone in this panel has been in jobs somewhere where you look at some guy and go, how the hell did they get that job? Swinney's that type. How did he get it? Certainly wasn't with ability. But here's the thing, Lloyd. Ian Blackford, Blackford said there's nobody except John Swinney can do that. There he goes. He said, Ian, nobody else to change the SNP fortunes except John Swinney. If that's the case, we're in a hell of a mess.
Yeah, you're in a hell of a mess if you listen to anything that Blackford's got to say anyway. I mean, this is a man who, if the truth was bouncing up and down in the bridge of his nose, he wouldn't recognise it. He's finished. He's through. He's of no importance. What Ian Blackford has to say, much as over the past 9 years, it's of no importance. Did it move our country on any? No. Did Brexit happen, Ian? Shut up, get back in your box, divorce your current wife as your regular entertainment. No, I can't stand Blackford. I can't stand Blackford's interventions, because Blackford is probably the most slimy, backstabbing of all the people I know in the SNP and have known for a very, very long time. The change in Ian Blackford from the man who fought the Paisley by-election to the man who now wants to be in the House of Lords. Sorry, Ian, you gave up your card, you gave up your right to speak a long time ago. Yes, John, unless we want history to repeat itself, and I'll just a reminder for people, in 1999 I was elected to the Scottish Parliament in the SNP under the leadership of Alex Salmond. Alex Salmond went a year or so later back to Westminster, and John became the leader in an extremely unnecessary, unpleasant and rigged contest. Within 2 years, it was very clear that we as a party, instead of rising as we should have done, that we were dropping, and we were dropping rapidly. And then people began to say that the only way we can change this is by changing the leader and bringing back Alex Salmond. Thank goodness there were clever enough people in the SNP to see that reality in 2003. And indeed, John stood down, Alec came back, and what did we get? We got a Scottish National Party government. Then we got a Scottish National Party majority government. Neither of the two things it would be possible for John to achieve. I would suggest that what's happening now is that the outcome that was preferred by the British in 2007, that the Scottish National Party should be put back in its box, they're hoping for that result this time round. And I say this: if the Scottish National Party goes into the 2026 election with John Swinney as the leader, they will lose, and they will lose heavily. And I say that not just on the basis of the fact that they have lost trust with the vast majority of the marginalised in our society who came out and took part in and voted yes in the referendum in 2014. Those people feel abandoned. And now that they see John Swinney back as the leader of the party, that just confirms to them that they have been abandoned by the Scottish National Party, and they've been abandoned for middle management types like John, the comfy, those that are not that concerned about the real difficulties that people in our country are suffering at the moment. Who can replace John? I've got a monkey on a stick that could do a job as good.
You can be so cynical at times, Mr. Quinn. So
he was my boss. He was my boss, Roddy. Right? You know, unfortunately for the other three of you on screen here, he was never your boss. Come on. I mean, genuinely. I mean, this is not the time or the place, but there are two or three incidents that I'd be happy to share with you that show the absolute measure of John Swinney, the Boy Scout.
Yeah, well, you
this man cannot lead a political party whose central principle is to remove themselves from the political structure that they currently are part of. That's beyond John's ken. Utterly and completely beyond his ken. He wouldn't know how to do it. And it's dead simple, John. You just take the key out your pocket and you lock the door and say, fine, you go that way, we're going this way. It's not rocket science.
We've got to find someone. Someone's got to appear. Cometh the other, cometh the man. But the one man who thought his time had come, he's now deleted the tweet, unfortunately, before we managed to grab it. If anyone's got it, consent us. Our PT was obviously on the Talisker. The new deputy, the deputy, who shot the deputy? But I shot the sheriff. But we PT had visions overnight, Phil, of becoming the leader at Westminster. That was it. And he said that this was his moment. The moment had arrived for PT to be the leader of the SNP at Westminster, probably so he could improve his chances of becoming Mr. Speaker. But if ever there was anyone who had ideas above their station, it's that little pipsqueak.
Yeah, the less said about Pete, the better. Being completely blunt, to be completely honest, and just I know Alex. Alex is, although he's the partner, and not the partner in India that I worked in, the Ayrshire one. I was building a bridge across the Ganges not so long ago. Fascinating place. On the check yourself skinny diet, right enough, if you were eating the local food, because it just didn't do. Oh Jesus. Anyway, it was an experience. Alec Neil calls for Swinney to resign. Is he right? Who could replace him? Ian Blackford pumps in. Lloyd nailed Ian. I completely agree. Now, Alec Neil, on the other hand, is a very experienced player in politics, as is Blackford, as is Ian Blackford. But he also is not without fault, nor should he be devoid of blame of what has happened. To his credit, he stuck by Alex, so I'll give him that. But your first question I want to answer, because I completely agree with everybody here, no, Swinney should not resign. Alec Neil is wrong. Alec Neil is this for the same reasons that these guys who just perpetuate, everybody we've mentioned is perpetuating this gravy train ride because they're still on the gravy train. And that is wrong. What is the point of changing the leader of a party where the leadership is completely compromised? The whole leadership. They're just taking shots each. Remove Nicola and flashy eyelash guy comes in. No change. Remove flashy eyelash guy. Swinney comes in. No change. Remove Swinney. Change it for some other muppet. You haven't changed the whole leadership and the ethos of the party that has been compromised. Equals no change. Clean out the Augean stables. Big job. Tough job. But somebody's got to deal with that shit. and it ain't any of the current incumbents. Now, Pete Wishart, what gets to me, sticks in the craw, well, this is my time, my dream, my big moment. You've been milking it for a long time. You went there to get his independence, Pete. You failed like all the rest of us. I failed. We all failed. But I'm not bleating on and starting and continuing to do what failed. I've got the courage to come out and say I was wrong and that we are wrong and continue with the SNP and do not, and I mean, there's nobody in the SNP that's going to make a difference as a leader. It's the party and the decision making and the policies and the strategy that are all wrong right now because it's all written by people and influenced by people who don't have the best interests of Scotland at heart. And they're liars, thieves. You're a thief. You're disingenuous. You're saying you're part of the SNP and you're taking us towards independence, yet you continue to kowtow and you continue to take us down dead ends with stupid policies, and you're not taking the opportunities. You're not taking the opportunities we give you. You're not following the instructions we're giving you. We demand that you get us independence. And because you have failed for the last 10 years under Nicola, every single one of you clowns, it doesn't matter which idiot you get in, wake up, people. I mean, again, back to Orwell. People who vote for corrupt politicians are accomplices, not victims. So, no, not good enough. And Alec, you're part of that problem. And you've been playing this game too long. If you think that's the answer, you're wrong, Alec Neil, and you should know better.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to clear the whole thing out. Well, not really getting rid of one, because who'd be next? Robertson? Kate Forbes of the Scottish Conservative and National Party types. She's too far right for me, being a lefty. She of Freeport's fame. No. But the other one was the so-called pro-independence, or should we say the SNP fan magazine and house magazine. They've come out and said, let's work together and bring in the Westminster big hitters to Holyrood in 2026. So let me get this right, Eva. The people that the voters have rejected because they didn't do the job properly, they want to bring him in to replace the dead wood with more dead wood in Holyrood. Am I getting this right, or am I missing something?
This gives me the absolute fear. The quality of the SNP politicians in Holyrood is, as we've said so many times already, mainly very poor. There are government ministers who cannot deliver a speech. They have to read it. You watch Holyrood live and you cringe every single time because the standards are utterly woeful from most of them. I don't know why they bother delivering speeches that they stand and read, because they clearly don't understand what they're reading, let alone mean it. Unfortunately, the same applies to most of those who've just lost their seats at Westminster. There are clearly a few exceptions, namely Joanna Cherry, Philippa Whitford, who stood down, Carol Monaghan. There may be others that are eminently capable too, but in the main, they're not. And in the main, they went to Westminster and achieved the square root of F all for Scotland. That's the reality. Again, make an exception for Joanna Cherry for some of her achievements, especially in the context of court actions, etc. But to think that those who have failed, who've been rejected by the public, will do their damnedest to get nominated for constituency or perhaps list seats when they've signally failed in the one job that they had to do, which was to take our country to independence. Many of these folk were elected at the same time as you, Phil, in 2015. Most of them weren't born when I was an SNP councillor in the 1990s. They don't have a strategy to get to independence. They didn't have that strategy when they were at Westminster, and it's abundantly clear that they're not currently writing the strategy to achieve it were they to be elected to Holyrood. So the best thing that the SNP can do for the sake of Scotland is to say to all of those members who are currently scunnered, come back into the party and be active again, come along to meetings and vote for the candidates that you actually want to have standing, that you believe prioritise Scotland's independence as an urgent necessity and the furtherance of all Scottish interests, because it's pretty plain to the world that most of those that just lost their seats are not capable of doing either of these things because they don't know how to do it. They were constituency MPs. Many of them were offices of good, hard-working staff who did a lot of really valuable work for individual constituents. But in terms of the bigger picture for Scotland, they have achieved zero. You don't reward failure.
No, you don't. You don't. Now, here's the thing, Lloyd. We know you were at a recent meeting. You could tell a story if you want. But they're still in denial. I mean, I remember putting this tweet out even before the vote was cast, that when it all goes wrong, they'll blame everything and everyone except GRRB, hate crime bill, the woohoo, Stonewall, Sturgeon. Everything else will get blamed except what happened. And they still weren't listening. But on debate night the other night, a man I know, a follower of mine on Twitter, and I follow him, Peter Brohan, techie, stick up Peter, who absolutely nails why 750,000 of independent supporters stayed at home.
On Thursday that I've never done before, which was to spoil my vote, because I'm a passionate believer in independence from Scotland, and there wasn't a party available to me in Western Buckinghamshire I could decently vote for. I think also I did it that way because, like the 500,000 people you're talking about, I wanted a very loud message to be sent to the SNP from the wider independence movement that it's not good enough. And they have to sort themselves out now or possibly dissolve themselves because they are not carrying us towards independence.
He absolutely nails it, Lloyd.
Yes, he does. I think apart from being utterly shocked that suddenly I heard someone talking sense on debate night, I was really pleased that he was able to complete everything that he had to say. But what I enjoyed most of all was looking at how uncomfortable the panel were, particularly the Tory, because here was the message that the Tories pretend doesn't exist. Nobody out there is interested in independence. Pam Glancy, looking totally uncomfortable as well, as the truth was spoken. But the two most uncomfortable people on the panel, Ben Macpherson and Nicola McEwen. Now, Nicola McEwen has had an interesting kind of semi-detached relationship with the leadership of the Scottish National Party for nigh on 2 decades now. I mean, in years gone by, Nicola was spoken about as a potential candidate. She's an incredibly bright woman, but unfortunately, she's allowed herself to be dragged into the bubble, the same bubble that Ben Macpherson's in, the same bubble that the Tory councillors in and Pam Glancy as well, where they have their own narrative and they will brook no other narrative. The only person who was comfortable, because he had just heard what he knows to be the truth, was Kevin McKenna.
Yeah.
And what Kevin McKenna contributed to the programme was enormous. But it is interesting. There was a panel, and the uncomfortable ones on the panel listening to the electorate were the politicians. And the only one on the panel backing up the electorate against the politician was the political commentator. Is Kevin McKenna the only one we've got left? A genuine political analyst? Maybe he is.
Yeah, I don't see another one anywhere in Scotland. I used to have high hopes of Ian McWhirter, but he flits about like a bee in a meadow.
Never trust a Scottish public school boy.
Yeah, well, some good public school boys have come out,
Present company accepted, shall we say?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Your pal Stephen Flynn, meanwhile down at Westminster, was really sticking up for Scotland. He was, settling up. Techie, stick up Stephen's, I don't know what I would call it, his chat to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to begin by welcoming all new members to the Chamber, in particular those members from Scottish constituencies. There's probably a few more new members from Scottish constituencies than I would like to have seen. but I do look forward to working constructively with you to deliver in the best interest of the people that we are all so fortunate to represent. To you, Mr. Speaker-elect, I think it's safe to say that me and you didn't always see eye to eye during the course of the last Parliament. But in politics and in life, I think it's important to let bygones be bygones and to focus on the future. And I think events of that time showed us that me and you have quite a lot in common when it comes to both then and indeed the general election, because despite the best efforts and indeed the best intentions of certain people, we both managed to hang on to the seats that we hold so dear. Mr. Speaker, I do look forward to working constructively with you over the course of the coming weeks, months and years to allow us to best represent the people that we respect in the finest traditions of this House. Thank you very much.
There's a reason why I could never have been a frontline politician, Phil, because the way I'd have done it, I'd have been get it up you and get it up you, get it up you and get it right up you is what I would have said and been thrown out the chamber. But what I find really quite unsettling about that is, for example, the way he's joking about unionists winning seats, how he's saying, you and I, Mr. Speaker, hope these seats that we hold so dear. How can any Scottish independence, alleged Scottish independence warrior, hold dear a seat in the English Parliament? Explain that to me, Phil, because I don't understand it. I don't get it.
You can't, you shouldn't, and this guy is settled down. He's settling down. This is reminiscent of Tommy Shepherd's, look, we're all going to work together, we're not here to rock the boat. And I'm going, what? What? But he's ex-Labour. He knows the game. And I'm looking at that, and Stephen Flynn disgusted me with that one. I've got to say, he's an ass-kissing shyster. This spinless weasel has settled down. Hold his seat dear. We can work together. I'm looking forward to it. Here. The amount of here's. He's a jolly good fellow. You weasel. Yeah, you're a waste of space. You've went. You're already low. I had a good opinion of you, Stephen, when you were working for independence as a councillor in just before the 2014 election, and I was trying to push, try to get the Yes movement and going into Aberdeen, Yes Aberdeen going, because I was trying to do both Yes Aberdeenshire and Yes Aberdeen, and I met, and there's a McRae was young lad McRae was brilliant. He was great. He worked really hard at it. But when I met Stephen, I thought this guy's got some. He's a smart cookie and he's passionate about it. But now he's got the best job he's ever had in his life. He's got the best job he's ever going to have in his life, and that, my friends, is the problem. Most of the people who are career politicians will in the land the big one. That's it. They're not moving. They're not shifting. They will bend with any wind that blows. They will. The weather vane, I mean, I remember, and we know who wrote Mary Black's speech, but she talked about a famous quote that some politicians are signposts and not weather vanes, because they stick to their principles. Now, that's admirable, but the opposite is also true. When the situation changes, so does my opinion. And you, sir? And I think it's a Jonathan Swift one from memory. But this guy has just admitted that he's there for the money. He's there to keep the peace and not rock the boat. He therefore does not represent us. So the people of Aberdeenshire, North and South, you made a mistake by voting for these two shysters. I'm afraid. If you vote for MD in the SNP, and that's hard, because if I was in Coatbridge, I would have voted for Stephen Bonner. He's one of the good guys. But I would have had to really push myself, because voting for a party that has betrayed me sticks in the craw much stronger than voting for somebody who might represent it slightly better, when the kicking was and is necessary. And it appears another kicking is necessary, because from those weasel words of Stephen Flynn, these people are not for changing. And one wee thing, talking about, so one thing I disagree with Evie, I'm afraid, but on the strategy with the National, we get the big hitters, and you showed Alison Thillis, and I just, what, really? Give me a list of successes from Scottish MPs at Westminster and who the big hitters are. There isn't one. What was hit big? Name one thing. Also Joanna.
Expenses.
Yeah, expenses, touche, expenses were hit big. Also, Joanna achieved next to nothing to achieve Scottish independence. Sorry, Joanna, you let your ego get the better of you and you won a Pyrrhic victory in court against Brexit. But what was the result? Did we reverse Brexit as Ian Blackford wanted and told us weren't going to be dragged out? No. More importantly, instead of taking advantage of your enemy making a critical mistake, which Napoleon taught us, you go off and go on a mission that, in my opinion, equates to intellectual masturbation because it achieved nothing. Instead of focusing on leading us to Indy, when we had the worst UK government self-harming itself and dragging us out of Europe, destroying the economy, what did you do? You weren't fighting for Indy. Instead, you were trying to reverse democracy in England. And anyway, it comes to the National, which is not a genuine independence paper owned by the Herald. No, not a happy bunny here, I have to say.
Yeah, we can see that none of us are. But here's the other thing: we've got a new energy minister who this week.
Really?
There's a kind of there's an absolute dilemma here that I can't.
Have they got no level in woodwork? Is it Rodney? Is it Rodney? Del Boy?
No, here we go.
Who is it?
Ed Miliband, techie. Stick up Ed Miliband, our new energy minister.
My friend is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. So here I am on the latest stage of my GB Energy tour.
His latest tour on the GB Energy.
Barney.
That's a polite way of putting it. Eva. This is the guy, and in the same token, he's turning and he's stopped all new licenses for drilling or exploration. And he's doing the GB Energy thing, pretending he's doing us a favour, stealing our resources. He's a man's a muppet.
That is the clown that Stephen Flynn wants to work constructively with. This is what you're dealing with. That's the mentality. It is utter lunacy. And this talk of working constructively is something the SNP have been saying for a while now. It takes me back to Ben McPherson in spring last year when he made exactly the same comments. In essence, he was supporting the notion of what he might call Devo Max and constructive discussions and cooperation between the Scottish and the Westminster governments. As Phil have said, they've sold out, totally sold out, but look what they've sold out to. You know, I keep coming back in my mind to the same line from Sir William Wallace. How can I be a traitor when England is foreign to me? And I'm thinking, what would William Wallace have to say about these fools were he alive today? He's up there in a cloud zooming about just now, looking down at Scotland thinking, what the hell? I was hung, drawn and quartered for the likes of these muppets, because that's what it boils down to. You know, I detest London. My mum and dad eloped there, but thank God they came back to so that I was born in Scotland. But on the few occasions that I visited London, I hate with an absolute vengeance Traitors Gate and Smithfield. My blood runs cold. Yeah. And to think that these representatives of Scotland in Westminster are sucking into the very people that colonise us. They didn't colonise us to subsidise us. They colonise us so that they can take our resources, and that includes our energy resources. GB Energy is not an energy production company. In essence, it's nothing other than an investment vehicle. It's a sham, it's kidology, it's utter nonsense. What it will not do is provide cheap energy to people who need it. What it will not do is maximise the return to Scotland. What it will do is it will ensure publicity for the Labour Party, a sticking plaster for a while they decide what they're going to do with Grangemouth. Because what they're not going to do with Grangemouth is keep it open as a functioning refinery. What they'll do is Grangemouth will close, the refinery will go, and Scotland's oil will go south to be refined. There is nothing surer than that, because they don't care about us, because they have catched us, and they will keep us secure and tied to them for as long as the Scottish people elect the cowards and the clowns that they sent back to Westminster last week.
But here's the other side of it, Lloyd. While he's saying no more oil, no more exploration, etc., etc., Rachel Reeves earlier in the week is saying that, you know, using British oil, we prefer to call it Scottish oil and gas, Labour, Scottish Oil and Gas, for a UK wealth fund, something we were told was not possible to have. They're going to take our resources and they're going to use them for a UK. Now we know what that means. That means for an England wealth fund. But at the same token, they're saying we're not going to allow you to drill anymore. They're catching contrary already. The Labour Party are, more faces than a church or a town hall clock.
I think it's a simple situation of they're under orders yet. They don't know exactly what they've to do. We could spend an awful lot of time talking about this new broom British Labour government, and we probably will over the next few months. But in real terms, what we need to be talking about is the fact that in a circumstance like this, the Scottish government, the Scottish National Party, Scottish government appears behaving like the three wise monkeys. They're blind, they're deaf, and they're dumb. All of this is going on. Apart from the fact that Grangemouth and the access to our natural resources should be front and centre at every single election for every independent supporting individual, because the people of our country have been deprived of the knowledge of the wealth that we have in this country and how that wealth could be applied to deal with the many, many social problems we have. And indeed, not even social problems. How about creating a better standard of living like they have in Norway or Denmark or Finland or Sweden or even Belgium? But what we're locked into is what suits the Labour Party, suits the Scottish National Party, is to say that's a bad thing. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you come up with your own answers? Where the hell has been the answers from the Scottish National Party and the Scottish Government at the threat to one of our absolutely vital pieces of infrastructure? Next to nothing. We also know that they're the three wise monkeys over the special economic zones and the free ports. There's big stuff coming down the track here, and stuff that will not benefit the people of this country. And until the SNP waken up to the fact that they need to know about this, they need to tell the people about it, they have to understand the implications of the plans that Starmer's British Labour Party has for us. Now, if you're amateur at politics, what you do after you get a kicking on the Thursday night, then you say absolutely nothing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, if you're amateurs. And that's what's happening now. They're all sitting in their corners, they're licking their wounds, when in actual fact they should have come out fighting. Flynn should have stood up in there and not thanked Lindsay Hoyle for this and Lindsay Hoyle for that and all the other bollocks. He should have said right there and then, I stand here on behalf of the people of Scotland and I want answers. But no, and that's never ever going to happen. We know that that's not going to happen because, as Phil has pointed out, and he's been right in the belly of the beast, it takes a certain level of mental attitude, understanding, and just straightforward courage and backbone not to crumble to the Westminster system. What we're seeing now is a whole bunch of people that have crumbled entirely to the Westminster system. I mean, what I find extraordinary about it is that anyone could have such a limited attention span that they would forget that half of or 2/3 of their comrades are no longer members of the Parliament because the people spoke last Thursday. Does Flynn think that he got a pass? Does he think that the people didn't speak for him? Here's an interesting fact. Where are the only two constituencies at the last general election that the Tories did not carry out a deliberate and very specific policy of tactical voting? Aberdeen North, Aberdeen South. Tory vote held up. They didn't tell them to go and vote for the Labour Party. They did that in every single constituency across the country, but they chose not to in those two places. The bells should be ringing, most especially after that. Well, was that a speech? Or was that Oliver Twist? Because it looked damn like Oliver Twist to me.
Yeah, absolute submission. Absolutely, Philip, submission. Because now, as I said, and again, before we'd have vote, that the Unionists would be cock-a-hoop. And we know, we went through this last week, the Labour victory, although huge in numbers, actually when you look at the numbers, wasn't great. It was the collapse of the SNP, it was the collapse of the Tories, and a bit of intervention in the South by Reform. Labour only get 33%, but they're cock-a-hoop. Independence, the beast has been slain. It's all over, bar the shouting. And what our Anis Sarwar, our little hutchy grammar boy, it's a poor man's public school incident, has said they're going to reset devolution. What does that mean? They're going to reset. Does it mean they're going to be more subservient?
But the really important point you make, and you referenced it right at the start, and you referenced it just there, is we are going to reset devolution. And we are always going to put the country first before our own political parties. So we will work with anyone and everyone to deliver for the Scottish people. And that's why Keir Starmer's first visit outside of Downing Street is coming to Scotland. I'm meeting him directly.
Which country is he talking about?
Yeah, we're both thinking the same thing. The country he's talking about is the UK. The UK will come first. And that means England, because obviously you didn't go to the Glasgow High School at you, Roddy, or he would have got that right, obviously. But no, the Ambies were good enough for me, St Ambrose, Coatbridge, and well, even I know that he's lying through his teeth. Even I know that when he's resetting devolution, what we're going to get is less rights, even less. They'll go at the ministry that's been set up, the Ministry for Truth, the Ministry for Stealing, the Ministry, whatever they call it in Edinburgh, the Ministry for lying through their teeth, the Ministry for painting Union Jacks everywhere, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They're there to take and keep control, reduce the amount of influence, because by God, that was a close thing. Not only did these whippersnappers, these ingrateful oiks, have the audacity to almost vote for their independence when we give them a notional view on it, even though the dice were set, but they actually think that they can take their country back. And hold on a minute, they can. There's over 50% of them. Well, let's destroy that opportunity right away. So let's completely make it impossible to happen. So what we need to do is completely corrupt the only party that currently stands for it, which was SNP. They've got control of the SNP. The SNP no longer represent the people, and most of the people have figured that out. But the media will not let the rest of the people understand that. And the media, who will go along with it, since it's controlled by 8%, with 89% of it's owned by 6 billionaires or 8 billionaires or something like that. The UK media is corrupt and doesn't tell the truth. The resetting, I see it as more of this lashing that we need. Something Frankie Boyle said. He was kind of blasé about it, but he says, bring on the revolution. And I remember in that 2014 post-result episode of, I don't know, hollowness I described it. I saw a wee guy, and I was saying the same thing at the time, a wee guy in Glasgow in the George Square say, right, they want it, bring it on, give us hell.
Yeah.
Give us hell, because that we asked for, and that's what we deserve. And it's the only thing that's going to waken the rest of us up, the majority up to what's going on. My calculations at the time were very, very cold. I calculated looking at the numbers, because I'd been a big part of organising and running Yes Aberdeenshire and setting up Yes Aberdeen. and so after I looked at it, and I thought, even if things stayed the same, in 5 years, looking at the demographics with the 73% over 65s, under 18s voting yes, no, 5 years and 2 cold winters, and which is quite a kind of harsh bit of estimating, but I thought, am I being counting QS? And that's what the result was. Within 5 years, we would be in a majority SNP. We'd be a majority SNP, I thought, at the time, because we, at that time, stood for independence. As soon as Nicola took over, the game was a bogey. Didn't know that. We all took longer than perhaps we should have, but we certainly cottoned on way ahead of the vast majority. But nonetheless, it's something to boast about, because it's incremental and individual by individual, instead of a large group of influential people giving up what they've got and saying, no, we're making the change now, we're fighting you. We allowed Angus Robertson, who I will never forget for doing that, to take away the strength of the people at conference, and that power and that energy and that thing that made us real. So no, the resetting is just for me More powers to Westminster, less to devolve government, and I think that's not a bad thing. Show that we are a council, because we've already proved under Alex Salmond that we can run ourselves. I think bring the pain on. I think the crash that's coming, it's why the baton's been handed over to Labour, because the Tories aren't that stupid. So they'll pick up the pieces when the crash comes, when the BRICS economy float their currency of, with a basket of currencies probably, which will reverse fiat, and the Chinese, the Ukrainian war gets put to bed. Things are getting really, really dead. People are probably unaware that you're actually really close. We're all really close to death, so I don't know what we're all worried about. Nuclear war is chapping on the door right now. And the people who are causing it are doing so to make money, and they don't really give a shit. They don't think it's going to happen. They're not that stupid, but they're selfish and greedy enough to push it to the limit. And we're now in a situation where you're getting a guy called Anus coming to lead you in Scotland and lead us down a dark path we really don't want to go. Excuse the pun.
Eva, here's the thing. Starmer's told us that they can't afford to end the two-child rape clause, that they can't get rid of the bedroom tax. It's, just too expensive. However, first thing he's done in the first week, he sent £3 billion to Ukraine. And he's increased defence spending by 0.5 or 25% increase in defence spending, taking up to 57.5 billion a year in defence on offence, not defence, let's be quite clear, on offence, which is twice what Scotland as a nation gets approximately to run every year. Now, as a person who equalities is your middle name, I find it disgusting, don't you, that we're spending all this money on weapons, but we can't actually get rid of child poverty or make a dent on it. We can't do something about our pensions. We can't afford to get rid of the bedroom tax. We can't afford to get rid of the rape clause, but we can afford to get money to kill other people in other countries.
That's why we call them the Red Tories, because there is very little to pick between them. That's evident. And the reason why the two-child rape clause will stay and the bedroom tax will stay and they won't provide, for example, universal free school meals is because these people don't actually matter. No matter what protests or protestations or claims or promises you get from Keir Starmer, it's all hot air. If you wanted to alleviate poverty once and for all, there are two good ways of doing it. One is providing good, high-quality social housing, which Labour signally failed to do when they were in power in the Scottish Parliament. They're not going to do it now that they're in power at Westminster because good quality social housing doesn't actually feature high on their agenda. And the other way to properly tackle poverty is education as a route out of poverty. It's not, as Anna Sarwar said a few weeks ago, just to work. That one line from him betrayed completely his utter ignorance and I would suggest lack of care for people who are living in poverty. So the Labour Party, make no mistake about it, are not the Labour Party of old. My mum, like others here, would have parents who benefited from moving into a council house in the 1950s, having an inside toilet, the NHS. They had grown up knowing that you had to pay when the doctor visited your home, and so you tried to avoid it as much as possible. Those enormous leaps forward, that massive progress for the United Kingdom and for Scotland will never happen again under the Labour Party because they don't care. What they care about is getting power. And to get power, they have to sell their souls to the people of influence and to Middle England, which is what they did again. And those people in Scotland who have voted Labour this time will be sorely disappointed at what is delivered. There will be some good work done by constituency offices for individuals, but the big policy, big ticket stuff ain't going to happen. Poverty will not be addressed. Housing issues will not be addressed. There will continue to be claims, as we've seen this week from Anna Sarwar, that the Scottish Labour MPs will get wired into SNP MSPs about their poor record. It's about a battle between party politicians. It's not about what's best for Scotland. And all of this is being done so that Labour are poised to take control of Holyrood in 2026. There is nothing surer than that. And if the SNP want to avoid that, and if they seriously want to head towards independence, we'll go back to what we said at the outset, they need to get their house in order today, because next week, month or year will be far too late, and Scotland will be looking at a Labour government in Westminster and a Labour government in Holyrood, and quite frankly, the combination of both should be terrifying in terms of what they'll do to the economy and what they will not do for the people of this country who desperately need change and hope, the two things that were promised perpetually by politicians, but this lot will not deliver.
No, they won't. You know, I'm sick of us being right on here. We've been right about so many things and they've all been bad. And we're right about this. If the SNP don't get their act together and the rest of the indie movement, and we find out why our 750,000 supporters didn't vote last week, we have got a huge problem. We've got a plan. We'll talk about it later. Starmer has given, the UK has given permission. He's only been in the job a week. He's determined to start World War III, Lloyd. He's given the Ukrainians permission to fire British missiles into Russia, into places like Stalingrad, St. Petersburg, or Moscow, or Rostov-on-Don. Go put them, fire them where you like. The Russians have warned the West, if you do that, we will retaliate. Is he mental?
Roddy, I find this war game playing by people who, it's not really their business. They don't do this for a living, but they're prepared to send all sorts of children, other people's children, to go and fight in their wars. But what astounds me about Starmer in the statement about the use of British-provided weapons is this is a man who used to be the head of the Department of Public Prosecutions. This is a man who has a law degree and a half. This is a man who should understand, particularly when he decided to go into politics. Surely he would be bringing his expertise of the law, and surely if he was seeking the top job, then surely some expertise in international law might be a bit smart. It would appear he has none of these things. But as many people have said, he appears to me as he's like the plasticine man. He is so malleable. I mean, this is the man who, at the very time he was serving in the shadow cabinet under Jeremy Corbyn, he was having secret meetings with the Trilateral Commission in the United States and cozying up to the US State Department. Now, doesn't he understand? Ukraine is losing this war, and it's losing a generation in the killing fields in the west of it. This is a proxy war by the Brits and the Americans and by that lunatic Stoltenberg. Stoltenberg, the man who's never had to fight a war, so now that he's got the chance and the power to run an organisation that can fight a war, well, he's having his go. It's what always happens. Boys with toys. But the absurdity of Starmer's position is this. It is a crime in international law to sell weapons that will be used against a third party. That's just a simple fact. But some of the time you get the impression that we've now emerged, well, particularly in light of what's been happening to the poor people of Palestine for 77 years, but particularly in the past 9 months. Are we now living in a world of post-legality, of post-international law? Does international law now hold, no grounds whatsoever? And are our leaders active in that process of the destruction of international law? Because if that's what they're in the process of doing, and the likelihood is that the great beast, the United States, will have Donald Trump as its president, by the end of this year, and you've dumped international law, well, I mean, we're back to the free-for-all of Genghis Khan. Do politicians not have some concept and understanding of responsibility? And I mean, always in my mind, it has been one simple thing. The biggest responsibility you can have in politics is to cause the death of others, or to create circumstances that leads to the death of others, be they your own people or other people's people. And it's the thing that you should think more in more detail about than absolutely anything else. I mean, I'm no Quaker, but I'm a great believer in do no harm. What we have at the moment is a collection of politicians, including our own in Scotland, who seem to be determined to do harm. Have we lost all sense of humanity? And here, here's a kicker for us here. If you escalate with the Russians and you actually move it to the point where they believe that the only way that they can get out of the situation is to strike back with nuclear weapons, then wakey, Scotland, we are target number one. The destruction of Britain's independent nuclear deterrent, housed at Her Majesty's Naval Base Faslane, is the first order of priority of the rocket forces of the Russian Federation. That's a fact. So if Starmer wants to play let's up the ante, let the people here remember that when we're all burnt to a crisp, it was Keir Starmer and a failure to support the concepts of international law that led to
it. I should just say that international law as we know nowadays does not cover the US, the UK, or the EU. They're in the law to themselves. Everyone else it applies to, but not to them. That's just a fact. But here's the reason, this war, why is this war happening? We keep asking ourselves, Phil, it's ridiculous, and there's so many people dying. And, I've made my position in wars clear. I'm against all wars, be it in Palestine, be it in Africa, be it in Ukraine. I oppose wars. But you say, well, why? And it's usually money. Techie, stick up Mrs. Thatcher. Not often you'll hear that in this show, Prism, stick up Mrs. Thatcher. See what she said years...
In proportion to their natural resources. If they were, Russia would now be the richest country in the world. Angola would be very rich, and there are many other countries that have a lot of natural resources, but they have not had an enterprise economy to develop those resources. Russia has everything: oil, gas, diamonds, platinum, gold, silver, timber, marvelous soil.
There you go, they've got everything, but it's not governed properly. Better we get in there and sort it out and, rape the place that we've raped Scotland, India, Africa, and the rest of the world. That's what she was saying, Phil. And that's exactly what's happening today, because BlackRock and all the others want in to get in Russia's natural resources. And so if every Ukrainian dies and every Scot dies in a nuclear holocaust, they don't care as long as they can get in there and rape it for money.
That's the tragic truth of this, an admission by Thatcher of all people, and she was almost gloating about this. And she was right in terms of communism. Communism for me is idiocy. It doesn't work. I don't know how many times we want to try it, but what we got to be careful about is the equation of socialism equals communism, because we need to be clear about what the definition of socialism is.
Well, she was talking at the time it was the Soviet Union.
Correct. So she was right, but it's commonly labelled. Yes, but what we're talking about, Angola, Libya, India, Iran, the West has been in there, and when these people stood up for themselves and started to stand their own, Venezuela started to stand on their own 2 feet, the West stepped in. The banks, the investment that we do is all about impoverishing people and getting interest on loans from the banks, International Monetary Fund. There's so many institutions that have been railroaded. Institutions that were set up for good, like the EU and the UN, that are being railroaded and controlled by those who you really don't want to be in control. Russia is an extremely wealthy country, and it's not the same as it was in the Soviet Union, not just geographically, but politically. And the irony is, Putin is probably the most pro-Western leader that this area has ever had. Ever. He wanted to work with us.
He wanted to be NATO, surely.
It was crazy, and it's not happen chance that this war in Ukraine kicked off, because all the oil lines and gas lines went through Ukraine until a couple were accidentally blown up by, I don't know, who did that? who knows? Nord Stream, obviously, and it certainly wasn't the Russians who spent a couple of billion on it, and then they blew it up because it sounded like a good laugh because they were just about to cash in on it. So no, the story's a very tragic one. The West we've not been the good guys for a very, very long time, and most of our incursions into, particularly the British Empire, was particularly good at attacking people with sharpened sticks and ripe fruit. You know, when we had machine guns and fixed bayonets and carbines, etc. So we were very good at that. And Scotland played its part. Of course, we sent enough people. I think it was about 5,000-6,000 people administered. India at one time for the British Empire, and a great many were Scots, especially the parts I was in. But no, this is part of the decline of the West, and what she's pointing out here is this is the natural order of things. When these countries get the shit together, as BRICS have, the shoes on the other foot, we are in for a big, big change. The decline of the petrodollar, the decline of the Western civilization, as it were. We're regressing, and thank God the rest of the people are coming up, and that hopefully the rest of the world will solve its poverty problem, because we're certainly not helping anybody at the moment. We can't even help ourselves.
No, it is. It's just ridiculous. Now, we always complain about being in a colony, Eva. I'm beginning to wonder if we're a colony inside a colony. Techie, stick up Starmer's statement about Palestine. He said, Eva, that he will delay recognising Palestine until the Americans tell him it's okay. He doesn't want to upset America. So are we just a colony of America, and then we're a colony of England? Is that I mean, it's quite embarrassing.
That's the special relationship for you. You know, back in the day of Thatcher and Reagan, we thought it couldn't get any worse. Look where we are now.
Not that bad. All is forgiven.
Not quite, but that was bad and bad enough. What you've got now, obviously, you saw Biden the other day, couldn't get Zelensky's name right. Well, at least Starmer can get the names right. No, this is really pitiful, actually, and the UK are in such a minority internationally in respect to Palestine. When you look at the numbers, there's, at the moment, 193 member states of the UN, of which 145 recognise Palestine as a sovereign state. So the UK is in a minority. And we're there because primarily we're sooking into the Americans, and we're not going to do anything unless America approves it and does it first. If that isn't still a colony mentality, I'm not altogether sure what it is. But it's certainly embarrassing, and it's quite wrong in the context of world affairs to be hanging on America's coattails in this fashion. I'm by no stretch of the imagination any expert on the Middle East, but I remember a few years ago, Matt and I were on holiday in Ireland, and we were in Belfast, and we met half a dozen Palestinian teenagers who were there on a holiday paid for by one of the Belfast charities, mainly made up of mums in Belfast who wanted to look after these Palestinian children. We got speaking to them, that would say the children, they were teenagers, late teens, I think some of them maybe early 20s, and some of them had lived in refugee camps for 13 years. And they were coming to Belfast for a holiday, and it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to them. You cannot live like this and expect people to spend decades in refugee camps and not try to fix these problems, because by God, if it's bad and bad enough in Palestine as it is at the moment, and, you know, war all over the world, it's only going to get worse if you continue to ignore and sideline potential answers.
Really cost myself another quid there. Clock's beating us as always, Lloyd, and I know Phil's in a hurry, so just a quick one. Recently on television in China, they put on a report on some of the killing in Palestine. If you stick up, they're immediately accused by Israel, guess what? Accuses them of anti-Semitism because the state broadcaster put on pictures of Israel bombing the Palestinian school children, which they'd done. And they're saying the Americans never see this suffering. It's amazing, isn't it? Israel is the problem in the Middle East, but the Chinese are anti-Semites for daring to put truth on the television.
Everybody is though, Roddy. You know, this is part of Israeli foreign policy, Israeli military policy, Israeli military intelligence policy, which is to criminalize anyone who does not support the Zionist project. And the means to do that is the redefinition of what anti-Semitism is. And that started in 2002 and now has been enshrined in law in a number of different countries. But this is, we have to understand what this is. This is not about protecting anybody's rights. This is about protecting the state of Israel from outside interference. And if you can get the rest of the world effectively or anyone who opposes you as Israel is immediately a monger of hate, an anti-Semite and everything, then you've won the game. But it's not working because all the evidence tells us that Zionists and Zionism is the Holocaust concept, not anything else. And I love the Chinese because the Chinese just say it like it is because they're an intelligent people with thousands and thousands of years of knowledge. The people who gave us paper, the people who gave us gunpowder, the people who gave us all manner of different things over the centuries. And they say as they see it. And could anybody deny that the statement of the Chinese is in actual fact wrong? I don't think so.
Well, yeah, well, the British can, the Americans can, CNN can, MSNBC can, BBC can. They deny it. There's no, as far as they're concerned, there's no genocide. Anyway, the clock has clicked on. We've gone over, as always. Eva, Phil, Lloyd, thank you very much for, as always, for everything you said. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll give you an update soon on what we intend to do about making sure in 2026 Hollywood doesn't fall to the Unionists, but we need your help. Till we speak to you then, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.